Loving Sairam, Sister Sumana Madhav. The Sri Satya Sai Global Council of Trinidad and Tobago lovingly welcomes you to the series Awake, Unite and Inspire. We are extremely honored, blessed and happy through Swami's grace and divine will to have you as our guest on this evening's program. And it is most fitting because in a few days we will be observing Ishwaramma Day. So, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Brother Faiz Sairam.
So, the very first question, Sister Sumana, is how did you first come into contact with our beloved Mother Sai?
My humble pranams at the divine lotus feet of our beloved Bhagwan Sai. I invite him to be a part of this conversation and speak through me today. My most loving Sairams also to all the elders who are listening. My humble pranams and Sairams to my brothers and sisters as well. Thank you, Brother Faiz, for this wonderful opportunity. You contacted me on a Thursday evening. We spoke, and I took that as a sign, as Swami's, guidance for me to talk to you. And thank you for this wonderful question. It is, this question, I think, takes every devotee back to this most precious time in their lives, which is pretty significant. And, when you contemplate and think about the answer, I think each one of us is left with nothing but gratitude to Swami himself. So my story is also one such, and I wouldn't be doing justice to this answer if I didn't first talk about my grandfather. So it was really my grandfather who first heard Swami's name in the 1940s, sometime then. At that time, he had heard the name Sai, but for some reason, it wasn't very pleasing to him. So although he was a writer and an author, and someone requested him to translate a document that was written in English about Swami into the Karnataka language of Kannada, where he was born and raised and where he lived his life, he wasn't really interested at that point. And he, politely said, no, thank you. I wouldn't want to take on this project. And so that was that. But, since then, I think now and again, this name kept coming into his life. And, as always, he would, just brush it aside. But this one particular time, he received a letter from a dear friend and a co-author requesting him for a book, which possibly would be available in Bangalore. So my grandfather read the letter, and then he read the name Satyam Shivam Sundaram. And what spiked his interest really was that this book was written by none other than Professor Kasturi. Now, Professor Kasturi and my grandfather go a long way back. I think they both were teaching in the Maharaja College in Mysore. And this was way before Professor Kasturi knew Swami, way before my grandfather had come across Swami as well. So they knew each other as young men. Professor Kasturi was also a mentor to my grandfather, and he inspired him to sort of get into the field of writing. So there was tremendous love and respect between the two of them. But my grandfather knew Professor Kasturi at a time when, he was this young man who was sort of, I think everyone who has known Professor Kasturi has known him to be a very humorous person. But apparently there was also a side of him that could be quite, sarcastic at times, or, he could crack some off-color jokes. And, so my grandfather was always sort of, in this friendly kind of banter with him, but he appreciated his literary works as well. He had tremendous respect for what he had written earlier. So now this book spiked his interest. He had no idea what the subject was, but because Professor Kasturi's works had made such an impact on him, he was curious to know what else he has written. So he went to Bangalore, I guess some of the bookstores, and he started looking for this book. And unfortunately, he didn't find it at some of the stores that he went to. So he decided, okay, since he knows Professor Kasturi, he can possibly just write him a letter and request for the book from him, and he could then send it to the other author who had requested the book. So as he was stepping into what was called the post office in India to send his letter out to Professor Kasturi himself happened to be walking out of the post office, and my grandfather was pretty surprised. And he said, I saw that you've written another book, and this author that they both knew is requesting for it, so could you please send me a copy? So and then he said, out of curiosity, what is the book about? And Professor Kasturi said, oh, okay, that book, okay, that is about Satya Sai Baba. So my grandfather was like, okay, so do send it. So, once he said Satya Sai Baba, he was like, all right, whatever, kind of, feeling. But anyhow, time went by, Professor Kasturi sent him the book, but he also received another letter from this author who said, who had requested for the book, saying, if you, didn't find the book, please don't bother anymore, because we already got a copy. I was able to source it from elsewhere, so we don't need this book. So I guess Professor Kasturi did send it. Now the book remained with my grandfather. So what else to do? I guess he didn't have to send the book. So he picked it up and he started reading. He said, okay, let's see what Professor Kasturi has written. So he did read the book, and then although, it was written very well, and, there were really beautiful revelations about Swami's life in it, it somehow didn't move him. He said, because he had known Professor Kasturi to be also a devotee of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and, Swami Vivekananda and all of such great teachers. And my grandfather himself had read and understood those works. Not only that, my grandfather also had, he was very proficient in languages. And with, people like Professor Kasturi's himself's encouragement, he had learned the language of Pali and read the works of Buddha himself. So he was inspired by all these great teachers, and somehow this book didn't seem to stand up to that expectation for him. I know a lot of people are inspired by that, but for my grandfather, he was impressed with Professor Kasturi's work, but didn't move him. But then later, I think, this was on his mind. And when he went to a fellow friend's home, he found, he had this habit of picking up books, anything new that he saw. He was very keen to see what new books, this person who has invited him had purchased. So anytime he got, anytime he was free, he would pick up a book from their bookshelf to see what they are reading at that point in time. So the book that he happened to pick up now was Satya Sai Speaks. So he made himself comfortable in their home on a couch, and then he started reading Satya Sai Speaks. And as he read that, I think minutes turned into, hours and hours, and he just sat there and he just couldn't put it down. Swami's own words, were in that book, also again translated by Professor Kasturi, but this was not Professor Kasturi's impressions of Swami. This was Swami, his words, talking directly to him. And he was stunned. For a moment, he was like, could it be that a teacher like Buddha, could it be like a teacher like Aurobindo, Sri Aurobindo, could it be like a teacher like Swami Vivekananda is walking the earth at this moment in time? So he was truly touched and intrigued by what Swami had to say. And Satya Sai Speaks are all about Atma Vidya, to show that divinity that is within us. And that was the topic that he was very, very close to. And immediately on that, he connected. And now he was curious. He wanted to go and witness for himself. So just as, Swami comes to each person in, some people describe it as, I love bhajans and I was inspired to compose bhajans, and that's how I came to Swami. So it was through writings and through books that this one author, who lived in Bangalore, was inspired to go and see Swami. So ultimately, I think when a friend, invited him to go over, he did go. He did go to Puttaparthi. And it happened to be a time when Swami was opening a few homes in the mandir. It was called a Gruha Pravesh, where, people come in for the first time. And Swami was inaugurating those homes. And my grandfather had visited with his wife and his daughter. And the very first time he set his eyes on Swami, he walked into the home, he inaugurated it, he placed his hand on my grandfather's head. And I think that was that. The Swami's presence really took over. And he had nothing. He just fell at Swami's feet, instinctively, without even Swami asking him or he asking Swami. He just fell at his feet. And there it was, all of his devotion right there in front of Swami. But what did happen was, I think, as Swami was going from house to house, his padukas, I think, stayed back in this house where my grandfather, was standing. And Swami just finished all of the inauguration and went on his way. He went back to the mandir. And my grandfather didn't know what to do. So he picked up Swami's padukas and obviously put it, to his eyes. And then he took, I think, a clean white piece of cloth that he found in the home. He wrapped it. And then he thought maybe, because the only person he knew in Puttaparthi was Professor Kasturi, he went up and he knocked on Professor Kasturi's door, and Professor Kasturi was flabbergasted. And he saw him and he said, "You, Buddha Jivi," I think he called him, somebody, the follower, the great follower of nobody but Buddha, "You here," is what he remarked. He said, "Buddha Jivi here." And then he saw that my grandfather was holding Swami's padukas, and he laughed. And he said, "Where else, right, could someone like you end up other than Puttaparthi?" I think was his comment. So with that, I think, my grandfather was captivated. And from there began his journey to Swami of many wonderful years as an author. So I'm sorry, it's a little long, but maybe I can now go to my story, which was now 2 generations later, right? So, my parents, obviously, both my parents, I'm very fortunate, were very devoted to Swami. So we were not, there was nothing like one parent was, one parent wasn't. A lot of times that happens too, right? So both my parents were very devoted and very blessed to be in Swami's fold. And through my grandfather and other interactions, they had numerous interactions with Swami. So one time, I think in the January, nearly 5 years before I was born, Brother Faiz, my mother expressed this interest, and as my grandfather's story goes on, my mother lost her mother. The first visit that they made to Puttaparthi was my grandfather with my grandmother, but subsequently my grandmother passed away. So my mother, on one Shankaranti day, it's a very special Hindu festival that's usually in January. That's when the sun, I guess, it's believed that, the days get longer. The sun moves to the northern hemisphere. So it's a time of positivity. It's a time for even the crops, I guess, grow better starting from then. So it's a time for celebration. And usually, traditionally, the girl goes to the mother's house to celebrate this festival. So that particular year, I think my mother expressed to my father that, Shankaranti is usually celebrated in the company of mother. And since, Swami now is my mother, can we go to Puttaparthi to celebrate the festival in his presence? So my father agreed. And at that time, I think my mother, my father, and my two older brothers, I have two older brothers, all four of them set out to Puttaparthi. And when they had that darshan, that particular darshan, Swami came up to my mother, and then he invited her in for an interview. So she was very happy and she got up to go. And my father and my two brothers were on the men's side. So she got up and she went all the way to the interview room, and they were sort of stuck in the crowd there. And by the time Swami had finished the darshan round and he had come to the door of the interview room, and then he asks my mother, so Swami knows, I guess, everybody's language. So he just asked her in Tamil. He usually used to talk to her in Kannada, which was also a language that my grandfather spoke. But in Tamil this time he asked, Purushar vandilya, he said. So, has your husband not come? Because she was standing there alone. And then she said, no, Swami, he's here. He's in the crowd, but the volunteers are not, are not letting him go. And then Swami jokes, go pull him by the ear and bring him. So she obviously didn't walk into, on the men's side, but anyhow, I guess she signaled him to sort of hurry up and come. And I think the volunteers eventually figured out that Swami wanted these people to go up there, and they let him go with my two older brothers. So they went in, and Swami was very, very loving. And my my second brother, my older brother and my second brother were inside. And as they walked in, I think Swami held my father's hand and walked him inside. And after a few minutes of conversation, he actually created a ring for my father. And I think my father immediately remarked, Swami, you have already given me a locket that you said you would make into a ring sometime. And then Swami said, no, this is Shankaranti. You have come, you have brought your family on Shankaranti, and Swami is giving this to you out of love. So accept it. And then my mother jokes that my father he put out his left hand, and then Swami beats it and puts it down, and he himself pulls out his right hand, and then he slips it on my father's finger. And so that was his blessing. And then he moves on to my two brothers. I think my second brother by then was a Balvikas student. So he was there with a book, his Balvikas book. So Swami picks up his book and then he signs his name on it. And then very lovingly, very jokingly, just as a matter of conversation, he pinches my second brother on his cheeks and he said, your mother, she said 2 boys, and then she put a full stop. But Swami has made it a comma, and he laughed. So my brother also obviously laughed. He didn't know what to do. And my mother also just, laughed. She didn't quite understand what was going on. With comma, I guess, in the English language is like there's something more to come, right? At that point, just to set the stage for you, my older brother and, my mother had her hands full. Like I said, she had already lost her mother. With my oldest brother, she had been through a very tough pregnancy. So even the second one, I think, was almost like a risk, right? She had a second child, and she didn't have a whole lot of help. Since her mother was not there, she didn't have a whole lot of help. And they were about 3 years apart. My two older brothers are about 3.5 years apart. So she had a very, very busy life in Bangalore. And furthest from her mind could have been, a comma or another one to come. So she just brushed it off. And not only that, my second brother was a very active, very naughty child. I'm saying it at the risk of him hearing it, but he even would stump his Balvikas teachers. They would come up to him and say, the questions he asked, oh my God, we really don't have answers to his questions. So, he was that kind of very active boy. So my mother had her hands full. So she just brushed whatever Swami had said aside and went on her way. But as time went on, I think a couple years later, again, when she was sitting in darshan line, Swami came up to her and said, you need to have one more child. I think this time he was much more direct. And then again, she didn't really pay too much attention. So it happened a second and a third time. And the third time, I think Swami told her, see, your health is not doing very well. I'm going to bless you with a child. You have this child, and things will be all right. And then, with apprehension, I think she said, Swami, but my situation. I don't have too much help. It's going to be difficult. And then Swami says, I will take care. So he gives her the assurance that he will take care. So with that, I think eventually my mother was blessed with one more child. And it wasn't easy, Brother Faiz. I think even all of the doctors, I think as she progressed through her pregnancy, said this was not viable. They said it was not, she was not going to carry this child to term. And a lot of the aunties that I used to meet later in Vrindavan would tell me how my mom, even through all of that, would constantly go to Vrindavan, sit for darshan in Swami's presence. And he would come around and he would bless her and say, give her all of that confidence and courage and say, I am here with you. And ultimately, I think when I was born, the doctor who also knew, I think, Swami a little bit, was really surprised, and she said, keep praying, keep saying your Sairam, because this is going like way better than expected. And so I think ultimately with Swami's grace, I guess he willed for me. If I'm standing here, Brother Faiz, it's all him. So that's how I entered Swami's life. So thank you so much for that question, Sairam.
Thank you very much, Sister Sumana. What an adventure you've had. Your grandfather, and then what a divine blessing it is for you to be born into a Sai family. Tremendous karmic merit, with your parents being so devoted to Bhagwan. And then look at it. They did not want a third child, but Swami had other plans for you. You had to be here on the face of the earth. So again, the mercy, the love, the compassion of Mother Sai, allowing you to take birth by telling your mother, I will give you one more child. So what a divine blessing, and how fortunate you are. Really, really wonderful.
All I can say is I'm grateful, Brother Faiz. So grateful to
Yes,
Swami.
yes, definitely. Gratitude is important in a situation like this. So, Sister Sumana, you know, many devotees over the years, they've had many wonderful experiences, each one unique to their own life and their own situation. And you haven't been born into a Sai family. Can you share at least two of your most memorable experiences you've had with our beloved Mother Sai?
Sure. I think, if just looking back, my life, I guess, like I said, Swami ordained me to be born at a certain time. And I think it was by design. When Swami actually left his physical form, I was still very much a young adult. So I think Swami can see much further, right? We only see what's in front of us. So he knew, like, people of my age obviously would have to lead our life, not depending so much on his physical presence, but we had to start, I guess, looking within and start relying on our inner Swami. So I think in my younger years, we continued, I guess, after I was born, I still had certain issues. I was lactose intolerant, and I had problems. And my mother would constantly take me to all of these doctors. My parents would take me to these doctors in Bangalore, and they would prescribe like heavy antibiotics. And for a small child, these antibiotics would only make things worse. So, things were not getting any easier. Although Swami had promised to take care, my parents had to do their bit, I guess, to take me, to the right treatment places and get me the right, medication and things like that. But it didn't seem to be working. So one person who my mother knew very well, who was also a Sai devotee, suggested one particular doctor who you would have sort of a more holistic sort of a solution to some of the problems that I had. And we started visiting this doctor, but the only thing to that was he lived quite far away. So my parents would make this effort to take me there. And because of those trips, sometimes I would end up missing school. And just for health reasons, just for checkups to getting those medication and things like that. Now I started school in this, it was a Catholic school, and they were a very disciplined they had a very disciplined regimen in their school. You had to, be on time. You had to, just as any other school, but I guess we had something called a uniform. We had to wear our uniform every morning, and that had to be very, impeccably clean, ironed. We had a school badge, we had a house badge, we had a tie to wear. So, and certain days, we had to switch from school uniform to sports uniform. But with all of these different, these doctor's visits, missing school and things like that, I could be, when I was younger, a little bit forgetful with the ways I handled things. I would rely on my parents to sort of, help me out. And with my parents as well, because they had two other children also, there was not, the attention was divided between the three of us. Sometimes I would mess up. And our school had this system where, if in a month you kind of didn't follow whatever those disciplinary rules that were set 5 times, then they would sort of pull you up, and your name would actually be announced in an assembly, and you had to sort of walk up on stage and stand there, right? And it was sort of a way for them to help you think about what you've done and fix it. It was a small thing, it was not like, but anyway, psychologically, it was quite traumatizing for a young child. And this one particular month, I think once I had forgotten a textbook. One day I was a little late to school. So each of these would sort of be like a check mark, that, okay, this was not done and this was not done. So I think I was up to 4 that month, and I was really scared. Okay, I didn't want this to happen. I didn't want, to be pulled up. And, expectations were pretty high. My teachers had a lot of expectations because I was generally a good student. It's just, I was a good girl as well. With all of these different activities that was going on, I was a little forgetful, I guess. I'm not making excuses, I guess. But, that was what was expected, and it hadn't happened that particular month. I was up to 4, and I think just around the time that the month was sort of finishing up, one of the teachers was absent. So when they're absent, there's a lot of hullabaloo, right? The class, they didn't have a substitute teacher, so everyone was creating a ruckus. And I was sitting quietly and, just hoping everything would die down and the day would get over and we would go. There was this one teacher who walked in and she said, I don't care who's making this noise. The entire class is going to get like 1 mark, 1 more of those marks. And so that was it. I was up to 5 that month. So the following month was going to be like my walk of shame up that stage. And they all knew, some of my family members, like my older, like aunt and cousins and everyone, had also been to the same school. So this was very, very traumatizing for me, because if I did go up there, I would not only get lectured by my teachers, the principal, everybody knew, and they would say, oh, your this person was so good, and I can't believe you did this, and this person. So I had all of these expectations to live up to. And the only thing I could do at that time was, Swami, they talk about Jesus Christ. They say Jesus Christ is compassionate and loving, and we pray every morning. And these teachers, they don't have a heart. It's not my fault, Swami. I got the 5th mark because everybody was making a noise. Swami, I don't know what to do. It's going to be humiliating. And I was also a little bit of a sensitive child. So I prayed my heart out. I prayed and I prayed, and it was constantly, I had built this sort of communication with Swami as I was growing up, and then I prayed, and it was that morning, and we had the assembly as usual. We went up, all lined up, and I'm just looking down, keeping my head down and praying. And then they go on and they start. We were divided into houses, so it would be one house followed by another, followed by another. And then finally, I think it came to my house, and they started reading all these names. And at one point, they just stopped, and a lot of these people went up on stage, and they said, you have to really do better and all that. And I'm just looking, and my name didn't show up. Nobody read my name, and I was like, is it done? Is it really done? Could it be? I'm not sure what happened. I hope none of my teachers listened to this, but that day my name just didn't show up. I was ecstatic, and I just said, Swami, thank you. I know it's just a small incident, and we probably should have gone up and just be done with it and say, okay, I'll do better next time. But it was totally at that moment that, it was Swami. It was Swami who understood that, it wasn't exactly my fault, and maybe I needed a chance to sort of redeem myself. So I'm not sure what happened, but I just said, thank you, Swami. And that was it. So growing up, this was just one that, I just sort of thought of, when I was thinking back. But, there was this constant conversation, not only when I was in trouble, but, I would just generally share my day. There were pictures of Swami in my home. Swami had also, I think, visited our home. So there was one really large picture in the living room. It was a picture of Swami on the sands where he had created the idol of Krishna. So that was one of the pictures there. And our puja room was right across from, in my mother's house, across from the kitchen. So as I walked in and out, there used to be these beautiful pictures of Swami where, wherever you walked, it looked like Swami was looking at you. So it was very easy to sort of have a conversation with Swami. And I would say, Swami, I would smile, I would, fold my hands. And so Swami sort of just became like a part of, another member of our family, although not physically, but, in his presence in the puja room was very real. His presence in our living room was very real. And we all knew, like, the conversations that happened, Swami would be listening in. So I continued, I guess, when I woke up in the morning, there was a picture of Swami. So there was this love and friendship that had sort of developed, even without, too much of that personal interaction. But I always questioned, the reason, I guess, also was by the time I was growing up, my grandfather had passed on. And like I said, my mother had her hands full with doctor's visits, and my other 2 brothers. So their physical visits, Swami would come to Vrindavan over the summers, and that time we always went. But to go to Puttaparthi was a little bit of an effort, right? You had to gather all the children, take time off. My father had to take time off. He started getting busier in his career. So all of that came together. So the visits were not as frequent. And if you look at that time as well in Swami's life, he has also divided it, right? The first 16 years would be contact with individuals. And then after that, he said he would be calling in more groups. And then after that, it would be more about Upadesh, just talking about Swami's teachings. And finally, it would be a lot about work, Swami's work for society, for society, for society. So the time that I was growing up, Swami was more into, I think, that Upadesha phase and also this service phase where things were starting to get really, really busy. So from both sides, I think, that opportunity for that really close interaction didn't happen for a little bit. So I always question Swami, why Swami, you picked for me to be here, but why is it at this time? Had I been born when my grandfather was there and those interactions were so close, my brothers have all of these experiences. I really don't have. I just have to hear from them and enjoy it. How about my own, sort of experience? So this one time, I think, and as I started getting closer to my young adult years, my parents, and after I had sort of developed this relationship with Swami on my own as well, I had this deep desire also to go to Puttaparthi. And so I used to keep asking my parents every now and then, can we go to Parthi? And they never once said no. Every time I asked, it would be yes. And within a couple of days, and I would always ask around the time when we had some time off. So within a couple of days, my father would plan something, either, a car or a bus that would go to Puttaparthi, Bangalore to Puttaparthi, he would make it happen. So this was one such visit. I had asked and we went, and, that morning we were sitting in Darshan. Sitting in Darshan line, and it was a beautiful, I remember, morning, and Swami came, the music in Sai Kulwant Hall started, and Swami just was walking out. And we were just so immersed. I was sitting behind my mother, and I was just completely immersed in looking at Swami, the beauty, the grace as he just floated along on his way. So he came by, and then I'm looking, and Swami is looking at me as he's walking. If you remember the mandir was on the right to the women's side, and he's walking, and his eyes are just, for a minute, I'm like, am I imagining it? Is Swami actually looking at me? And he's beaming all along, and he's walking, and he slowly walks by, and he stands right in front of my mother. And then he looks me in the eye, straight face to face. I'm like that close to Swami. And then he looks at my mother, and then he looks back at me, and then he looks at my mother, and he says, daughter, I know, daughter. My mother is also very happy. She says, yes, Swami, the daughter that you gave me, she's my daughter. But, my mother didn't realize all of a sudden. And then he looks at me and said, daughter, right? I said, yes, Swami. And then he said, and he put his hand out. That's when I was like, oh my God, I was sitting there, and I had a letter with me. And the letter was in my lap. I had forgotten about it even. I had my hands, palms, like that. And I was just looking at Swami. Then I realized, oh my God, that letter. And then it dawned on me what I had written. And then I gave it to Swami, and my eyes were filled with just tears. I couldn't even, at one point, I couldn't even see Swami because they were brimming with tears. And because my mother was in front, she took Pad Namaskar, and I also moved up, and I had Pad Namaskar, and Swami blessed. And just like that, he walked. And that was all the interaction was. And then my mother was confused, but I knew what was going on. Just that night before, all of these thoughts were running through my head saying, Swami, all of these beautiful experiences that you've given my brothers, and, they talk about it, and my parents talk about it. And then I read about my grandfather's work. You haven't really, I know you talk to mom, you tell her about me and things like that, but you have never once spoken to me. Not once have you spoken to me directly, Swami. Do you even know who I am? I think was my question. It's like, what a silly question, right? Asking the Lord of the universe. But at that age and at that time, I think for some reason, I needed that validation, that of my own accord, not as my grandfather's granddaughter, and not, just, do you know me? Was my question.
How old were you at that time, sister?
I was about 15,
Okay.
14 or 15 years old. So right around, when I was entering, like that young adult phase. Um, and then I was just overcome, you know. And so, and I later told my mother, I said, even she didn't know that I had written a letter or carried it with me, or I had these thoughts that previous evening. And I always go back and I wonder why that moment. I remember there was nobody at home that evening. It was just me. I was sitting by this window, and my mom always describes a time when, Swami visited their home. That's a story for another time. But, when she walked out and Swami had come, she would describe to me that same window where she first saw Swami's face. Imagine, so there's a knock on the door and it's Swami, right? So Swami, she first saw Swami through that window, and it was right by that window that I was sitting that day. I was looking out and I had all of these images in my mind. So I think I really connected with Swami that evening. And then I poured my heart out in that letter. And then I said, Swami, if you know me, tell me, right? If you know me, acknowledge it in some way. And that following morning, I think it was, just right from the get-go, Swami came straight. So I think it's in those moments of connection. And when our feelings for Swami is genuine, that's when I think Swami responds. That's the message I got. Another message I got from that was, it doesn't matter, like, who knows about you or who knows the work you're doing, or if it is maybe like publicized or not. Swami knows. He always knows. So, keep doing what you're doing because he already knows. And that is what is most important. Nobody else needs to know. You need to know, your Lord needs to know. And that is that. So that was the message I got that day. But it was the most moving and most touching experience that Swami, and like I mentioned, it was a very busy time, and that was the first interaction, and many beautiful interactions after that. But just that time for Swami, right? Sometimes we used to wonder, because people around us were all doctors, sometimes it used to be like plastic surgeons, sometimes it used to be like the water project people. And with all of that work going on, who are we really, right? Who do we, why does he have to, in that busy mode, pay attention to us? But he does, Brother Fez. He does. Each and every one of us are special to him. And so I think, I think we have to express that gratitude to Swami. It's funny, the other day I was with my children and we were in the Franklin Institute, and there was a sign there that says, they have an exhibit about the brain, and they say the human beings really cannot multitask. It is a myth that human beings can multitask. But this Lord of ours, we already know, even while he's at Darshan, he's with so many people across the world. So if there's anyone who can multitask, it's Swami. And I think he chose that day to sort of make me a small part, give me that validation very quickly, even in spite of all of the things that were going on. And I'm really, really grateful for that. So these are some, just a couple, one in his physical form, and, another, I guess, experience that I had of his presence, even without him being there, that I wanted to share. I hope that helps, Brother Sai.
Thank you very much, Sister Sumana. Very, very, very inspiring and very touching. And each devotee connects with Swami at their own level and in their own different ways, and that was very, very beautiful, the way that you were able to connect with Swami in those experiences. So I think your very birth has been a very miraculous and divine one. And that flow of divine grace is continuing through your life. So what a blessing. And as you said, you are so grateful to Swami. Yeah. So thank you very much for sharing that. So, Sister Sumana, what does Sai Baba mean to you today?
Oh, it's a wonderful question, Brother Faiz. What does he not, I guess, right? um, I guess everything. Uh, I would just say Swami is divinity personified. You know, through all of the wonderful stories that our teachers tell us, our parents tell us of all of the different avatars, every bit of those characteristics and qualities we can see right in front of our eyes with Swami. You know, he's been, I told you my mother also lost her mother. Uh, he's been the most loving mother to my mother. Now he's my most loving mother in my life. He's a father, so he takes you to the brink, like we said, when we are not disciplined, when we are sort of taking shortcuts. He sort of warns you like a father, but he rescues you again. Like I have seen in my life. As long as, you know, Swami says we don't make the same mistakes over and over again, right? He says you make mistakes, it's okay. Make one mistake, but then don't do it again. Learn from that mistake and move on. So he can be a father who can sometimes, you know, tell you that, yes, you have made this mistake and you need to correct yourself. And we all need to check back on that. He is a most loving friend, the most reliable friend. I can tell you that firsthand. You may make a new friend today, you may have a lifelong friend, but sometimes you cannot rely on your worldly friends. But Swami is there always by your side, and you can rely on him in every situation. So he's been the most divine friend. And in my younger years, I used to feel like, you know, this is just one-sided, you know, my friendship. It's only like, I consider you my friend, but you never reciprocate anything. But after that moment, I knew that he was that constant companion, that friend who's with me all the time, saving me from little situations, you know, situations big and small. So he's the most loving friend, you know, I guess that's what he is. He is everything. He's a, you know, many people say, you know, our guru is our God. But here we're all so fortunate to have God himself as our guru. And he's constantly teaching us, Brother Faiz. He's constantly uh, helping us understand this world around us and our role in it, and inspiring us to be just a little better than we were the day before. So with little steps, I think he shows us that he really is everything. He is that Krishna who said, everything else is Maya. There is only him. There is only him. And he manifests himself in so many ways. So I think he's divinity personified. Sairam.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Sister Sumana. And it reminded me in an interview when Swami told me that um, when you have plenty money, you have plenty friends. No money, no friends. And then he told me, make God your only friend. And as you so beautifully said, he will never, ever forsake you. So he's the best friend to have. And you can walk with him, you can talk with him, and you can have your being with him because he lies within your own heart. So he's always with you, you know? And then he says, mother will leave you, father will leave you, children will leave you, but God will never leave you because we are part of him and he is part of us. I separated myself from myself in order to love myself. So And then he says, no matter how high you may soar as a bird, one day you have to land. So you can't even get away from him because we are all one with him. So thank you so much for that beautiful sharing, Sister Sumana. And I know we had a question on, um, we normally ask, how has practicing the teachings of Swami transformed and continue to transform your life? And when I look at your life, being born into Sai, you know, normally you would have transformation of devotees who would have heard about Swami later in their life. They would have led a particular life. Sometimes, let's say they would go to parties or smoke or drink. They come into contact with Swami and then transformation takes place. But in your case, you were actually born into a Sai fold. So transformation um, may not be applicable in that sense as we spoke about. So um, I want to go to a question that relates to what you are doing now, which is being an SSC teacher. You are a regional YA advisor. But coming back specifically to the being an SSC teacher, which Swami says is one of the most important and valuable seva one can do because you're dealing with preparing and nurturing the character of children who are going to become citizens of tomorrow's generation. And Swami has a saying that educare is the Veda of the 21st century. And just to remind all of us, educare is bringing out that which is already latent in us. So the purpose of the SSC teacher is to be that facilitator, that example that would bring out the human values of love, peace, right action, truth, and non-violence from within the children, and then allowing that to govern, to motivate, and to inspire their thought, word, and deed. So, what has that experience been like for you being an SSC teacher?
So, Brother Faiz, again, thank you again for that question. It was again my grandfather who was called into this very role. I think very early in the nascent stages of Swami's own education program, Swami would have, I think, eminent people come and talk to students, talk to invitees in Vrindavan about various subjects, of faith and spirituality and culture. And that eventually, I think, translated into all of this knowledge being taken to the children, who may or may not even know Swami at that time. Some of the early teachers were not really, Swami himself was the earliest teacher, as we have seen, many wonderful devotees share. He would, when he either visited them or when little children went to Puttaparthi, they would all sit together and Swami himself would play games with them and sort of bring out those values in the very games that he played. And those themselves became the very first Balvikas classes. And some of those people who were sort of receiving that instruction and imbibing those values from Swami also went out and became teachers. So there was no special training, there was no qualification really required for you to teach children, except that, you had to be a good person yourself and be able to narrate some of these value-based stories to children. So I think some of the very early Balvikas classes were just, about gathering a few children, irrespective of where they came from. They did not have to be Sai devotees or know Swami or anything of that sort. Just gathering a few neighborhood children and narrating these beautiful stories with them. So, with some of these lectures that happened during the summer courses and things like that, my grandfather then started compiling some of these works and Swami himself wanted to start making it a little bit more formalized. He wanted people to first train and then be able to go out and impart these teachings to all of the children. And I can tell you that this was very, very, very dear to Swami's heart. He gave at that time so much love and attention to how this program was started and all of these lessons where he would take personal care to see how these teachers were trained, what topics these people need to talk about in the teachers' trainings. He would take personal interest and give them directions on how and what to say. So, we all know that, Swami wanted students to have this holistic education. And a lot of students got this through Swami's institutions, the ones he set up in, first of all, in Anantapur for women. And then, of course, Brindavan and Puttaparthi, which eventually became a university. But education was central to Swami's mission. And this particular mission, not every child or every student could get this sort of holistic education at Swami's Institute. So even though they went to other schools and other colleges outside for their secular education, having this Balvikas or these value-based classes was a solid foundation for that holistic sort of education that Swami wanted. And Swami's vision is always very broad, right? So this was his way to uplift entire society itself with, this education from a young age. And it's not to say that these children don't have it. And as you very beautifully mentioned, Brother Fez, we are all born when we are children. And Swami says the first 5 years, you don't even need any of this. They don't need to be in any spiritual education classes because children are born inherently divine. They are just a drop of that divine. But as time goes on, some of this starts getting covered with layers. So it is up to the teachers to sort of remind them, really, when we say bring out, just remind the children that they are divinity itself manifested in this human form. So just bringing that out, and it's really, really, really a process it's a beautiful process, when you start working with, and I've worked with children who are very young, and I've also worked with group 4 children. So, there's that progression that happens because you're already sort of exposed to it from a young age. But we also have students who join us sometime in between, right? And there is a little bit of a difference, but in both cases, we just have to remind the children. And when you narrate these stories, when you bring out some experiences that, devotees have had or you have had with Swami itself, I see that it touches something deep inside. We are not like instructing or telling them these stories so that they can learn about, Rama, Krishna, whoever. They may or may not already know that, but it brings out that emotion and that love for that deity, the way we narrate these stories. And I think that was the point, to build this loving relationship with God that they can now have one-on-one. So, I think that's where Swami really wanted us to, what he wanted us to do with these children. And we're all working on it. We constantly talk about it and we prepare for these classes, hoping some of the stories, and Swami says, never force, always go to the source and inspire. So we try to bring Swami's words itself into our classes. And what you see is really tremendous, Brother Fez. The children respond in such a beautiful way. And many a times they are the ones teaching us. Like I said, with my brother himself, I think Swami had said in that one interview, like he stumps his own Balvikas teachers. They're full of curiosity. They're full of like these thoughts, and they don't have any inhibitions. They will say it, out of their love, out of their innocence, and they will just say it straight. And when we look back, we say, okay, I have something to learn from this child. So there's learning all around us. And I think for the teachers, it is, like you said, a personal sadhana, because we really cannot tell anything to the children that we don't do ourselves. It will be caught in a minute, and you yourself will stammer and stumble and twist yourselves in knots when you're trying to deliver. So you always have a check on yourself, saying, okay, if I'm asking the children to do this, am I also doing this, right? And that itself becomes your personal sadhana. And for the children, they're just so loving and so receptive that this is the most beautiful gift that Swami could have given us. And I was lucky to be trained, and I'm lucky to have been working. I'm working with the children for about 10 years plus now, and it's always every class is inspiring. That's what I want to share. And so it was something very close to Swami's heart. So to all the teachers out there, again, Sairam, and yeah, I hope that answered your question, Brother Faiz. Sairam.
So certainly, and Swami has also said 75% of his time was spent with the younger ones, and his life is his message. So we in the organization, we need to focus, so give as much time and attention to the little ones, you know. And that is where the SSC classes come in. And I remember in 1986, he said at the first EHV conference, he said the best way to teach EHV is to live it. So we have to be the example, be the change, walk the talk, and a child will follow not so much what you say, but what you do. So even as parents, even before the child reaches SSC classes, the parents play a very important role in the spiritual development of the child, because at home, they will follow what the parents do and not what the parents say. And as we know, Swami compares it to a three-legged stool, the character development. You have the parent, the teacher or guru, and you have the child. But if one of those legs are cut off, the stool will fall apart. So he's often spoken about the importance of proper parenting. So as we are on that subject of the development and character of children, and you as a parent, Sister Sumana, how important is it to have good parenting? And this is even before the child reaches the SSC class. How important is it for parents to become role models for their children?
Yes, thank you, Brother Faiz, for that question. And it really goes back to what Swami talks about women, right? The mother is the first teacher for the child. And those first 5 years, I think, are very, very crucial in every child's life. And Swami himself has said, nowadays people just have children and then they hire in what in India used to be called an Aya. An Aya is a person who takes care of the child. So, you just have the child and then you hand the child over to the Aya. And what happens when the child is hurt or the child needs help? The child doesn't call out to the mother. The child doesn't call out to the father. The child says, Aya, can you help me? So what is the point, of you just having a child and just expecting someone else to take care? You have to be there. I think Swami made that point very clear, especially for mothers. You have to be there in the first 5 years of life at least. You have to dedicate that time to the development of that child, that raising that child is your responsibility. If you have taken on this role of wanting to be a mother, you have to make that commitment. I think Swami expects us to be with the child, and I struggled with it too. You know, we all live in a modern society, and we want a part of what everyone else in our mind has. But Swami, you know, very, very gently nudges us to say, don't get caught up in trying to be like everyone else. See what works for you. Listen to your heart and see if you are doing the right thing. Just going back to that time, I know I was just starting to begin my career as well. So there were two options, right? One was to say, okay, maybe, you know, my husband as well needs to pitch in. And, you know, if the child is sick or whatever, we drop the child off to daycare, and then we take turns, you know, in case the daycare wouldn't happen, to sort of take care of the child. But at least for me, just speaking out of personal experience and having been exposed to Swami's teachings all along, it was a very difficult transition. Although, you know, I was very brave in saying, yes, I'm also going to go back to work like everyone else. And, you know, all my friends are at work, and I'm going to drop this child off, and I'm going to jet off to work and then pick him up in the evening. I think I lasted all of 2 weeks. And he would really, like, you know, as I dropped him off, he would extend his hand and ask me to come back, and I would leave with tears. And, you know, this is something that all parents, if you read parenting books, Brother Fez, they say that this is natural. And the books say that we have to sort of resist it. You know, we have to go along with, you know, what we want to do. And we have to push through it, and eventually you will not feel that anymore, is what all of the books that, you know, the modern writers had written about parenting were saying. But why do we have this feeling at all in the first place? Do we go back and do we check? It is our inner voice. It's telling us, it's, you know, this is the time your child needs you. So there's, you know, there's such a vast difference between what Swami is, you know, and intuitively, and you know he's right when he says, listen to that feeling. Give in to that feeling. There's nothing wrong. You are a mother. It is natural for you to want to give, you know, be a caregiver. So why do we resist? And why do all of these books say, you know, just resist it, stand outside, make sure this child doesn't see you, you know, within minutes, the child will be, you know, with others, and you walk away and everything's fine. That's what I was reading. But then in my heart, I knew what Swami wanted for us. And I said, why resist it? You know, why not go with it? This is the one life. We've been given this role as a woman. Why not live through it? Why not experience it all the way it needs to be experienced? So, you know, that was sort of my learning as we went along. But Swami, I'm just saying, he wants us to be there for these children in those first 5 years at least. And I think there's tremendous development at that time. And for you also as a mother, there's tremendous development. So the parent's role is paramount, and especially the mother, the role is paramount. I hope that answered. Sorry, Brother Faiz. Sairam.
Yes, definitely it does. And I remember also that the parenting starts from even the moment of conception, because the 9-month period that the mother carries the child is so important, because the mother's bloodstream is the child's bloodstream. The child feeds off the mother. So whatever the mother thinks, whatever she reads, whatever she sees, whatever she eats will impact that little one inside. So even more crucial is that 9-month period if you want to attract a high soul into your home. These are the things that we have to follow. And when we look at, the mothers of yesteryear, as Swami says, they would read holy books, they would chant the name of God, they would sing beautiful bhajans, and this would impact the little one consciousness, and then you would attract a very highly evolved soul into your family, and then you won't have any problems for the rest of your life because you've done that 9 month period, you've sacrificed, and you've done everything to sort of impregnate the consciousness of that little one inside with so much of positivity, so much of divine vibrations through stories, through chanting, through mantras, through discussions, through taking, you go into satsangs, etc. So if it starts there, and then you go, as you said, in the first 5 years, the mother is there as the first guru, the first God, the first teacher, then you're almost guaranteed because 75% of the child's personality is formed in the first 6 years. So if you really, as you said, devote the time as the mother and sacrifice for your child, you can be guaranteed that that would be a very good value-based soul. And no amount of education by the mother leaving or ayah can provide that. So it's a powerful, powerful lesson. But at the same time, Swami says you can balance the two, with husband and wife working as a team. You can balance it in such a way that you give attention, you give love, and you give the amount of time that is necessary to the child while you may still be engaged in work. But it has to be worked out in the best interest of the child. So thank you very much for sharing that. So, Sister Sumana, as we talk about women, and Swami has placed so much of emphasis on women. In fact, as you said, the first of his institutions was the Anantapur Girls College. So the boys' college didn't come first, the girls came first. And there was a specific reason for that because he said women have important, crucial roles to play in the society. And I want to, before I ask the question, I want to read a quotation of Swami on women. And he says, Swami says, among human beings, it is a privilege to be born a woman. So the avatar is saying it's a privilege. In addition to being the spiritual leader in the house, women have excelled as leaders in the society. The honor and glory of a country is held in the hands of women. The strength and the entire social fabric rest upon her. Whenever women are honored, there is prosperity and happiness. Men should not behave in an arrogant way towards women, thinking themselves to be more strong and powerful. Truly speaking, women are more powerful than men. This is very humbling for men. The scriptures declare that men only have 3 powers, whereas women have 5. So, in relation to this particular statement, first of all, what does this statement mean to you as a woman, as a mother? And two, as we celebrate Ishwarama Day, Ishwarama was an amazing soul selected by Swami to usher him into this physical existence. But her contribution to society, especially to Indian culture and spirituality, and to women, is really amazing and inspiring. It is unheard of what she was able to do in terms of helping those in need and in poverty. And as we know, listening to Swami, the request she made to Swami to provide water, food, and medical care, to those in need was such honorable. So, in answering this question, if you can relate a little bit of it into as we celebrate, as we observe Ishwarama Day, the role that Ishwarama played in building a good society, in giving back to the community, in making the society a better place as a woman.
Thank you so much, Brother Fez. Mother Ishwarama was, as we all know, a most divine soul and the chosen mother. Again, we can't just say, Swami was born to Mother Ishwarama. Swami has said on many occasions that he chose for her to be his mother. And she was not initially named Ishwarama. I think her family had named her Namagiri Amma. But when she came into this household, I think Swami's grandfather, who had a little more, he was more tuned, into spirituality, he knew that eventually she would become the mother of Ishvara himself. And he, I think, named her Ishwarama. Not to say that, Mother Ishwarama accepted this immediately. For her, Satya, when he was born, was this most endearing child, right? We all feel that with our children. We are all so attached. And this little boy was stealing everybody's hearts, everyone in the village's heart. And he was hers. He was her flesh and blood. He was giving food to people who came over. He was taking children out into the Kalpavriksha. He was teaching them bhajans, but he was still very much her child, the most beautiful, most loving. We can almost imagine Swami as a young boy, so beautiful, like Lord Krishna himself, flitting around Puttaparthi and charming everybody. So when it came time, when Swami said that I am here not just for you, I am here for the entire world, we can only imagine as mothers, as parents, what that must have felt like for Mother Ishwarama. To sort of hear from your most beloved child that I am not here only for you. And we all assume that, isn't it? We all somehow feel our children are ours. Although Swami says they've come through you, they're just there. You're just facilitating their life. He is actually leading their life. But we all have that attachment to our children. So for her to be able to make this really big sacrifice of offering her own son for the world must have been such an important moment in her life. And we really cannot thank Mother Ishwarama enough for what she has done for this world. It's so appropriate to be talking about it around Ishwarama Day. And I know that my parents had seen Mother Ishwarama physically, my grandfather and my parents. And my mother used to describe her as this most childlike, innocent soul who just had nothing but love for Swami. In his her only requests. And from Swami's point of view, he was the most wonderful son, although he said that he had come for the people in the world and his mission was much larger than just being a son in the family. He always adored, respected, and took Mother Ishwarama along with him to many places. And he promised Mother Ishwarama that he would stay in Puttaparthi and make that his home. That was also one of her wishes. But beyond that, her three wishes, the way she asked for them, just shows from a mother's standpoint, how we need to look at motherhood, how we raise our children. She had the Lord of the universe at her disposal. This boy was her flesh and blood. She could have asked him for anything in the world. But what were her wishes, really? I think the way it's described in the books is, she saw someone struggling with a child and walking along the way. And then she says, why are you struggling with this small child? Why are you walking for such a long distance? And that woman expressed her feelings, and she said, there's not a single hospital in sight. My child is sick. I need to take my child to the hospital. So what else do? I have to carry my child and I have to walk. And this really moved Mother Ishwarama. Then on another occasion, I think she saw a young boy walking with a heavy bag on his back, walking to school. And then she asked the boy, where are you headed? Then he said, there's no school here, so I'm walking to Bukkapatnam to go to my school. So just observing these things. And then another woman who was actually carrying pots of water, on her head, and then walking along. These sights moved Mother Ishwarama so much that she went to Swami and she told him, Swami, why can't you open a small hospital for the people who are here? And why can't you open a small school for the children who are walking miles to get to Bukkapatnam just to get an education? Why can't you bring some water to this place, where people are struggling? They're going out in the morning and they have to carry water. Why can't you bring this to the village? And Swami's, I think, initial reaction, what the books say, was, where do I get the money from? And Mother Ishwarama, without a thought, this shows like how genuine she was. She just took off, I think, her gold jewelry and she said, here, use this, Swami. Use the money that we have to start these initiatives up. And then Swami tells her, I was only trying to see how genuine you are in your requests. And he says, don't worry, I will do it, Mother Ishwarama. So, he started, initially it was a very small hospital, Brother Faiz, if you remember. I think Puttaparthi had a small hospital that Swami started. There was a small school that he started also. And, these projects eventually, I think, became so large. There's now a university, and, the hospital now, there's super specialty hospitals. There are 2 of them, at least in Swami's presence, that was built. And then there's so many medical camps across the globe. People are inspired by what Swami has done in that remote little village in Puttaparthi. They take that as an example of how healthcare can be, free for everyone who needs it. And all of those doctors with so much love serve across the globe in medical camps. That has turned into a mammoth project. And water supply, we already know that. I think Puttaparthi has like this big water supply project in entire Andhra Pradesh, and even some of the neighboring states and some other countries too have taken Swami's example. And they have started out their water projects in countries like Africa and things like that to bring water to the people. So this sort of unselfish wish that Mother Ishwarama had, how many of us, I think, can raise our children to sort of, we all want our children to do well and become things. But if we can keep that focus on, them becoming those things, yes, they need to, but with the higher goal of serving society, I think we will have a much better world around us. And Mother Ishwarama taught us that, with her unselfish, innocent asks for small things that now, are gigantic projects across the globe. So women can, Brother Faiz, make such a big impact. She raised Swami, from when he was a child, and the asks that she made were something that Swami could easily do, although she may have thought that he needed her jewelry to start off on it. Lord of the universe is able to take care of it for us. And just on that, topic of women, there's one song that really moves me, of all of the it's not a Sai bhajan, and I apologize, I don't know who wrote it, but I'm going to use it. I hope it's okay. You may have heard it. It says, "Kaun kehta hai Bhagwan aate nahi." It's a Hindi song, and it says, "Who says the Lord doesn't come? Tum Meera ki jaise bulate nahi." Is your devotion as strong as Mother Meera? Do you call out to the Lord like Mother Meera did? She was born in a palace. She had all the wealth in the world, but her true wealth was Lord Krishna. With that devotion, do you call out to the Lord? Then how can you say he doesn't come? So it says, "Kaun kehta hai?" Who tells you this, that Lord doesn't come? Tum Meera ke jaise bulate nahi. Then it goes, "Kaun kehte hai Bhagwan khate nahi?" Who told you that the Lord doesn't eat? तुम शबरी के जैसे खिलाते नहीं. Do you try to feed the Lord the way Shabari did in the time of Rama? She wouldn't feed the Lord until she knew herself that the taste of what she was feeding him was perfect. Do you feed the Lord with that kind of devotion? And then it says, "Kaun kehta hai Bhagwan naachte nahi?" Who told you that the Lord doesn't dance? गोपियों की तरह तुम नचाते नहीं. Can you be that gopi? If you are that gopi, he cannot but dance to your tune in your heart. Then it says, "कौन कहते हैं भगवान सोते नहीं?" Who told you that the Lord doesn't sleep? Brother Faiz, in Puttaparthi, we used to rush in the mornings, early morning bell. We could not do it in our cities and big places. We had our alarms on and still we would shut it off and go back to sleep. But in Puttaparthi, before that bell, we rushed to hear that melodious, beautiful Suprabhatam in the morning. We wanted to be there to awake the Lord. So we know for a fact that we are awaking the Lord within ourselves as we sing that song. We have that opportunity to sit right next to the mandir and awake the Lord himself. So it says, "Kaun kehta hai Bhagwan sote nahi?" Who says God doesn't sleep? Ma Yashoda ke jaise sulate nahi. Do you put him to sleep the way Ma Yashoda put him to sleep? Then he says finally, "Kaun kehta hai," and I added this because now we are at a time for Swami, right? Swami's in our life, and we're talking about Mother Ishwarama. And then I would say, "Kaun kehta hai Bhagwan samaj seva karte nahi?" Who says God doesn't serve the society himself? Ma Ishwarama ki jaise? Are you as unselfish as Mother Ishwarama in your asks of the Lord? If you ask as Mother Ishwarama did, he cannot but serve society. And this song, Brother Fez, is, I would say, yet unwritten. It is an inspiration for all of us in whatever small way we can, with the devotion that Swami has inspired us to have. We can possibly be this Meera. We can possibly be Shabari. We can possibly be these ideal devotees of the Lord and serve society. And if you notice, they're all women. They are all women. So we have that power, Brother Fez, and we can serve Swami. So let us continue writing that song. I'm sorry I took it from whoever who wrote it, but it never fails to bring a tear to my eyes when I read that, because our devotion needs to be such. Thank you so much, and Sai Ram.
Sister Sumana, that was so touching. My God, it brought tears to my eyes. And the way that you said it with so much of sincerity and love, one can really feel it resonating through your words. So that is such an inspiring and beautiful message for all of us. So thank you so much for sharing that. And is it a song that people sing?
It is actually, I'm not much of a singer, but it's a beautiful song. And it stops at Maya Shoke just says Sulate Nahi. I added Mother Ishwaram there, but yes, I did take it from someone. It's a beautiful song, Brother Faiz. You can Google it
And
and hear it.
is it possible that you can sing a verse or two of it, Sister Sumana?
Brother Faiz, people are going to run away. um,
Please, I think it would be so wonderful if you could sing at least one or two verses.
okay, I will try, Brother Faiz, with your encouragement. कौन कहते हैं भगवान आते नहीं कौन कहते हैं भगवान आते नहीं तुम मीरा के जैसे बुलाते नहीं तुम मीरा के जैसे बुलाते नहीं कौन कहते हैं भगवान खाते नहीं कौन कहते हैं भगवान खाते नहीं तुम शबरी के जैसे खिलाते नहीं तुम शबरी के जैसे खिलाते नहीं कौन कहते हैं भगवान नाचते नहीं कौन कहते हैं भगवान नाचते नहीं गोपियों की तरह तुम नचाते नहीं गोपियों की तरह तुम नचाते नहीं कौन कहते हैं भगवान सोते नहीं कौन कहते हैं भगवान सोते नहीं माँ यशोदा के जैसे सुलाते नहीं माँ यशोदा के जैसे सुलाते नहीं अच्युतम केशवम राम नारायणम राम नारायणम जानकी वल्लभम साई राम
My God, that was so touching and soulful, Sister Sumana. Thank you so, so much. And what a fitting tribute to Mata Isharamma in that song. And so many wonderful things you've inspired us with by sharing her life, her message, and her supreme sacrifice. You know, I've never heard anybody explain it like that. That she sacrificed her son for the benefit of humanity. Such was her love for ensuring that the world became a better place. So thank you so much. So touching, so inspiring. So my final question to you, Sister Sumana, is if someone were to come to you and say, Sister Sumana, look at the state of the world. There's so much pain and misery. There's so much disrespect between parents and children. There's so much world wars. There's economic disasters. There's so much of poverty. People are living on the streets and suffering. So many millions have died with the recent pandemic, leading to people not being able to pay rent or buy food, you know. And this person asks you, well, sister, what can I do to make the world a little more loving, a little more kind, a little more peaceful, and a little more united? What would you share with that person?
Brother Faiz, we're all on this journey of transformation with Swami. And as he has told us, we live at a time where each of us, within us, have both good and bad within us. He has said that he has come at a time like Rama, or even as Jesus Christ did, or as Krishna did, where it was very easy to differentiate a good set of people from a set of people who were not doing very dharmic things. And it was easy then to vanquish the ones who are evil and then let the good remain. But the Sai avatar, I think he really has his work cut out for him, because each of us need to vanquish within ourselves whatever we have. And we are all here because we are working something out, right? We are all here to make ourselves better individuals. So I don't know if I can really advise, I'm equipped to advise people in the society, but we as people who are exposed to Swami's teachings for, either because we were born in his fold or we came later, we were inspired to come into Swami's fold. His teachings are timeless. Society around us may change, people and whims of the society may change, but his teachings have remained the same. From generation to generation, Swami has not changed things just because the world around us is changing. So if we can take the time to learn what he has said and transform ourselves first, vanquish the evil that is within ourselves. Swami says kama, krodha, lobha, moha, madha, matsarya, all of these vices, if we are able to purify ourselves, we will carry that goodness with us into society. Wherever we go, certain times, just a simple smile, in a situation that people are so busy just going about their lives, and then you take the time to smile at someone. And people have asked me this. I said, just coming across you sometimes just brightens our day, because you just give such a warm and genuine smile. I think the more we are connected with Swami, the more we tune in to his energy, we carry that energy with us everywhere we go. We don't have to say, oh, I'm a Sai Baba devotee, I'm a Sai Baba devotee. But what we can do is manifest his human values everywhere. Just be loving, be kind, be generous, be thoughtful, and it will show. And not only will it show, it will rub off on people. They will want to sort of be that to the next person they come across. It's very easy to snap at someone, someone who's taking a little extra time in the grocery store and you have to run to pick up your children. Instead of snapping, if you can maybe give them a hand, if somebody older is taking some time, give them a hand to offload their cart. They're going to give you so many blessings, Brother Fez. It'll stay with you. And these are situations that I've been in. And people have reacted, and then I have counter-reacted in a more loving way. And then they sort of come back and they say, you taught us how to be better. Not just with your actions. You don't have to, I'm not saying I'm somebody great, but just with little actions that we can be more giving, more loving. We can sort of be an example. And Swami holds us to that standard too, right? Because he has given us so much. It becomes our duty to sort of live that way in society. And so hopefully, as more and more, and we can surround ourselves also with the right company. We can teach our children to do the same, be loving and kind and generous. And so I think it'll have an effect in society if we can just live out his human values without lecturing, without telling anyone what to do. Show, not tell. Be that person that Swami would want you to be. And initially, when I told you earlier, right, even our asks of Swami used to be very self-centered, right? We would just say, okay, Swami, help me get a good grade, or in my case, please let me not go up on that stage, be pulled up for something that I have done. Or it used to be very, very like, okay, I need this, please do it for me, Swami. But then we are not separate from society. And society is a very, very diverse, has a very, very diverse set of people. You know, homogeneity, nature didn't intend for us all to be the same. So what may seem like injustices to us does happen. And instead of feeling helpless or instead of feeling sorry, what we can do, and I used to witness too in my young adult years, certain things that I felt was not right. So my asks of Swami too, you know, in my letters was stopped being about me because I already have Swami's love. I have my parents. I used to start feeling grateful, and my letters would always begin with a thank you, Swami, for what you have done for me. And it was not so much asking about something for myself, but for the things I was seeing in the life around me. Even though I had something that I could have asked for, I would ask for someone else. And those were the moments, Brother Faiz, and these were small interactions with Swami. But the way Swami responded when he accepted those letters, you just knew that, you know, all of that love and that prayer has reached him. And he knows what you're feeling, and he will take care of it for you. Sometimes when you're young, you feel helpless. You can't yourself go and do something. It may not be right. That person may not want it to. So there's an example, but you know, I won't say it, but you know, there were a lot of people, there was something that was going on. A lot of people were trying to help this young girl, but she did not want it because, you know, it would create more problems for her later. So I, in my helplessness, just wrote a letter to Swami and, you know, made it a point to go to Vrindavan that day and pray that he accepts it. And he did. So he transforms us in a way to be more giving, more loving. And even our prayers for these people, you spoke about wars, you spoke about injustices, you spoke about chaos. With just our prayers, we can make a difference, and we must make a difference through our prayers. So I would say just be what Swami would like us to be. And if you think there's something that needs to be changed, you can also use your prayers to help society. And be that loving, like we said, Swami knows way beyond. He knows what's coming in the future. So all of this loving guidance he has given about being tolerant, we are all different. But, you know, we can find a unity even in that diversity. Our values are all the same. Every human being is born, doesn't matter which race or which culture or which language or which religion, we're all born with these inherent human values. Let us focus on that. Let us know that our neighbor is no different from us. They may pray to a different God or they may use a different name. It's ultimately going to that same one source. So let us be more tolerant of each other. Let us understand each other. And I think we'll create a much better society. Sairam.
Thank you so much, Sister Sumana. That was very, very touching and so practical in our society today, and that which is so direly needed. You know, there's an English song that says, "What the world needs is love." And as you said, we can radiate that love, we can radiate that light, we can radiate that prayer. We may not be able to physically help someone, but just radiating love and light to the world. Samasta Loka Sukhino Bhavantu. Such a beautiful, effective prayer. So it has been an absolutely beautiful, inspiring, touching, and soulful interview. And I thank Swami for you. So the Sri Satya Sai Global Council of Trinidad and Tobago wishes to express gratitude and appreciation to you for taking the time to share your personal journey, your transformation, at the divine lotus feet of our beloved Mother Sai. May Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba continue to bless you and guide you. May you continue to be the loving instrument that you are as his mission unfolds. Jai Sai Ram.
Thank you so much, Brother Faiz, for this opportunity. I'm actually a consumer of these talks by so many eminent and wonderful devotees. I never once imagined myself, sitting with you and talking, but I very humbly thank you for your encouragement, and I want to apologize if I have said something I shouldn't, or if I've spoken too much. I ask Swami for his forgiveness, but thank you truly for this opportunity, which helped me go back and have a check and sort of live in that Swami consciousness for a few hours, so that I could express myself. And I thank Swami for helping me, not a very willing person when it comes to sharing, but I do appreciate, and I learned myself a lot through this session. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and Sai Ram.